Hi everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Wednesday, and we're going to spend this particular video talking about the short range and the potential for a nor'easter for the very beginning of next week. If I'd cut a separate video with regarding to long range earlier today, if you'd like, you can take a look at that also. And if enough of the model is out when we get toward the end of this, we'll take a quick look and see what it's doing. But first off, let me take you through the short range, and we're going to start. This is the NAM model for today, but before we get to that, I just want to show you what the surface looks like, because we had yesterday's low that was over Lake Erie that is redeveloped off the New Jersey coast, and it's just taking its sweet time moving out of the way. So as a result, we have northeast winds across much of southern New England into northern New Jersey, and then they become more northerly as you move down through New Jersey, and even a few light northwest winds showing up. The problem here is that we don't have a really good dry push with this onshore flow still continuing. So that's the reason why we're kind of sitting in clouds and even have some light rain and drizzle to deal with from time to time. Just show you the freshened up radar here, and we'll go a little closer. You're not going to see the very light rain and drizzle that's at the bottom of the atmosphere. You're going to see the ones with the higher tops on the radar, and those are showing up in parts of eastern Pennsylvania. There's some precip off southern New England, a little light precip over Long Island. That's the kind of day it's going to be. Now, we are going to see some improvement on Thursday because that low pulls out and high pressure builds in to the northeast. So that should at least be, I think, the one day that will have some sunshine, although we may still have some clouds lingering around early in the morning. You'll notice that there's rain across Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, down through Mississippi. This is with a lead low that's coming out to the northeast. To the west of there, we've got snow in Utah and down and through Nevada, northern Arizona, and also into the mountains of California with another stronger low that's going to be ejecting eastward, and that's going to be probably the one that becomes the nor'easter. Now, the NAM doesn't really go out far enough, and you can see here that arm of rain kind of shrinks, but enough of it holds together that we get into some rain later Friday into Saturday morning. And then we've got this complex that comes into the west, a lot of energy with heavy snows again in the mountains of California, heavy rains, more drought-breaking rains for the west, and that energy starts to move eastward, and you can see it here by Saturday evening. We have a low in northern Texas, but not a lot of well-organized moisture on the NAM through Saturday evening, which is kind of expected. There's some rain in the Carolinas and into parts of Virginia, some scattered showers, and then kind of a second area of rain that develops back through Mississippi and Arkansas as that low begins to pull out. So why don't we just take a look at the GFS, because that goes out far enough, and it pretty much lines up the same way. There are a couple of elements here that are key. First off, there is going to be big high pressure building up in southeastern Canada and Labrador that's going to attempt to build down the east coast. So with the blocking pattern that is set up in the atmosphere, and I'll show you in a second, that's going to try and force everything to go further south and east, and perhaps south and east of what models show, so that by later Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening, you're getting into the first round of rain. And notice that big high is kind of building down. The GFS and the Canadian did this yesterday in a really exaggerated way, in my view, but it is draining down cold air from New England, so that it actually wants to start it off as some snow or sleet in the Hudson Valley, northeastern Pennsylvania, maybe even into northern New Jersey and Connecticut here for Sunday night, and this low, you get one wave of rain that kind of lifts up, but the main area is with the low that tracks down into Georgia. Now, you got to remember, just a few runs back, that low was forecast to be up somewhere up here, so we knew that that wasn't going to be the case because of the fact that we have all this blocking going on. So the low starts to lift up northward. It can only get so far because of the block. And you can see by Monday morning, there's still freezing rain and snow going on through much of New England, central and southern New England, excuse me, and into the Hudson Valley on the northern fringe. That cold air actually drains pretty far south Sunday night, and then the warmer air from the low kind of overtakes it a bit. But that low is fairly deep and, runs out off the Carolina coast. Also notice the lines of equal pressure here, the isobars, very, very tight. You have a very tight pressure gradient between the high to the north and the low to the south. So this is likely to be a windswept soaking rain for many areas. I wouldn't be surprised if, we're going to get definitely gales. I wouldn't be surprised to see gusts of 50 along the coast with this. And then the low, slowly begins to migrate eastward. Actually, through Tuesday evening, we're still raining here. And I think this has the potential to produce at least 3 to 4 inches of rain. So this is going to be a huge drought denting event for the Northeast as it plays out. And the other thing that's happening is with regards to the system in California, with their next round of heavy rains and snows, that's going to come out. Let me just back it up. This is the one that comes out for our event in the east. Another one is set up behind it, and that one becomes a fairly decent snowmaker for the Rockies and eventually for Nebraska and the Dakotas and into Minnesota, if this is right. And I think it's this low that really begins to orchestrate the change to colder weather that comes in later next week. Now, let's look at what's happening in the upper layers of the atmosphere. I'm going to turn that sound off so it doesn't annoy everybody. So let's look at what's happening in the upper layers of the atmosphere with this. And let's back up. We'll change it to the upper air. And we will move this along. Okay, so this is the first system that kind of lifts up, and you've got this ridge here in the east, so that's why the first system doesn't become strong. The second one, and you see it here, it undercuts this upper high, okay? Instead of lifting up like the last one did, this one is forced to go further east. So what you have is basically a big blocking high to the north. So the storms cannot take, their normal natural progression would have been to want to turn northeastward, but it can't. So it's just going to get kicked along in that southern part of the jet stream and remain, at least according to the models, intact, fairly intense system. In the meantime, also in the east, you've got this trough. Let me just show you right here. You have this trough here that's swinging down through New England. So there's actually a little bit of colder air that wants to come in behind that. So you got the high here, the upper high, right in there, and that trough swings by. So when that trough swings by, it actually tries to cool the low levels of the atmosphere in the east. It's not that strong, but you can see what the block does. It forces this to go to the south and remain pretty intense as it lifts up northeastward. This is how you get some pretty serious nor'easters. If we had a little bit more cold air, this would be a snowstorm. In fact, it's odd because it's coming, in terms of the dates, it's coming at the same time that last year's blizzard happened. But the difference is that you had Arctic air sitting overhead, and that created a very cold atmosphere all the way down into the mid-Atlantic states. You don't have that this time around. You have the colder boundary much further to the north, so it would be a question of whether you could get it to drain further south. So that gets kicked out by the system behind it, and you see it here. And we are now at day 9, and if you, just a quick hint here at the long range on day 9, here's that ridge building in the west, you have the trough in the east, and you are now finally getting the flow to come back where Canada opens up and brings down some cold air. But that's at the beginning of the process. It's going to take several days for colder air to gradually work into the system. So I think the first step will be to bring temperatures back closer to normal, and then maybe late in the period we start to go more below normal. Let's look what the Canadian did. Now, I want to show you yesterday. I'm going to go back to yesterday's day run of the Canadian, because one of the things that the Canadian showed yesterday, that it's actually probably going to turn out to be correct if the GFS is kind of going along with this idea, in that the Canadian had this very strong block here, and it forced the upper low to be intense and way to the south and east. Okay. The other models had a slightly more benign look and a warmer look because of it. But the Canadian had this very deep, intense look, and as a result, what it did yesterday, and we'll get you nice and tight so you can see. And I wrote a post about this yesterday. It was a pretty far-fetched idea, but the Canadian actually had heavy snow for from Boston down to Washington D.C. and Baltimore out of this. And when you punch up the snow map from yesterday, which was equally hilarious in my view, this is what it did. Okay, that was amazing, really, when I saw that. But I have said many times that the Canadian in the long range has been right. Probably the last time it was somewhere at the Battle of Hastings or in the Crimean War or something. Now we go to last night's, which shifted everything a little further north in terms of the cold air, and it created this sort of monster snowstorm for upstate New York and interior New England. So that's the Canadian. I'm going to look at this with you for the first time. So let's see what it did today. And it's not out. The snow map, unfortunately, is not out far enough yet. So we'll have to keep that a mystery for a little while. So let's look at the surface, because we could probably garnish some clues out of this, and I'll go close up on it. So we do have enough of the surface, at least, to go out into the fifth day. So here is Saturday on the Canadian. And then here comes that low for Sunday. And you notice that the Canadian tries to drain down cold air in interior upstate New York and in through interior New England out of this. It doesn't go out far enough, so we don't know what happens once it goes by. But that high is trying to drain down some cold air. It's only going to be able to get so far. I would be shocked, honestly, to see it drain down all the way to the coast, even though I've seen really strange things happen in the weather world sometimes. But I kind of think that this is sort of one of those, super long shot ideas. We'll try and see if on the wider view, it's only out to 120 hours. But you can see the action here with what's happening. The upper air really tells the story in terms of what is actually happening dynamically. Here's the U.S. view. And you can see how the upper low, the first one is able to turn northeast, but it goes into the ridge position and weakens. And here's the second one that just kind of undercuts everything and moves on out. Wait, did the maps just come? Oh, this is the upper air. Okay, hold on. Let me just back it up. This is the upper air on the Canadian, so hopefully the surface is back in. Here's the upper air on the Canadian. There's the block on Sunday. This is the that trough I showed you earlier that swings down and helps to drain some of the cold air southward. And then that upper low is just forced east-northeast, and then it kind of gets wrapped up, moves off the New Jersey coast, moves almost right overhead into southern New England, and then takes off. And then we start to see the gradual adjustment to a colder look in the longer term. Is the surface out yet? Let's see. And it is not. Okay, and let's go to the GFS one more time. You can take a look at the GFS upper air here and take a look at that, and we'll back that up. And there's the GFS, it does, it kind of has that idea to the east that helps to drain the cold air down. You can see that block building, and there's the upper low. It takes it almost straight east and then starts to, ejects it pretty much straight east. So, that's going to be one of the critical questions here in terms of how this happens is, how does that upper low react to the block? Is the block going to be stronger than modeled? Is it going to take longer to get out of the way? Is it going to force things a little further south? That could have some implications for inland areas, at least, well north and west of the coast. And, how much of the rain and wind gets in here. We can look at the total precipitation amounts and take a look at that in terms of snowfall. You can see where all the snowfall is going to be to the north. And you can see also the ample snowfall that goes on in the west with regard to those systems coming into the west coast. In terms of rain, we'll go to accumulated precip, and I'll back this up so we can have enough of it here in view. And as we go, figuring this takes you to Wednesday, I mean, it's generating the purple areas. I'm just trying to gauge. Most of the heavy rain, the purple areas, are the 3 to 5 inch rainfall amounts, which are kind of touching the Jersey coast and into southern New England. But you have every bit of 2-inch plus rains going back further west, and also ample rain in the southeastern part of the United States. So really much of the East Coast up and down gets a pretty good dosage of precipitation. And look at California through 6 days. I mean, it's it's showing huge amounts of rain on the order of 6 to 12 inches or more occurring up and down California and on up into southern Oregon. The mountains get tons of snow out of this. So this is going to be a really another huge drought denter for the West, a big drought denter for the East and particularly the Northeast. And why don't we give the Canadian one more chance to show itself far enough out? Let's keep our fingers crossed. No, it's not there. I'm sorry. I wish it were. We're going to have to resolve the mystery later with a post on meteorologistjoechaffee.com. And of course, don't forget, I did an earlier video on the long range. You can take a look at that on my YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free. And this way you get notified whenever I put up a new video. Download my app and subscribe to my forecasts, which are for the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, and Hudson Valley area and Eastern Pennsylvania. The download is free. The app's just $1 a month. It's not icons, folks. It's me writing my forecast outlook. You get me, my opinions, and you also get latest satellite and radar loops that update in real time and all sorts of other stuff. So by all means, if you'd like, please do so. It costs less than a cup of coffee, and it pays my bills a little bit. All right, so have a great rest of your day, and we will talk more about this on Thursday.